Okay, take two. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Em and this is my reading circle. In today's video, I'm gonna go ahead and do a very special type of video. So over the past few years, a lot of my friends know me as a reader, and because they know me as being a reader, they have asked me for very specific book recommendations, especially for different types of tropes or different types of genres that they want to go ahead and get into. So I thought I would go ahead and make an intro guide of books that I highly recommend if you want to try a specific type of trope or you want to go ahead and try a brand new genre. I have 7 recommendations for you guys today. I'm going to be talking about thriller, spooky horror books, historical, mystery, young adult romance, and then lastly, a life book that I highly recommend. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get to it. I do want to go ahead and put a quick disclaimer though and say that for some of these books, I will not be providing a huge in-depth review with them just because I want to go ahead and let you guys experience the magic that I found within those books. So starting off with number 1, we're going to go ahead and talk about an intro thriller book that I highly recommend, and that is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. And I don't say that this is an intro book because of the content. It is in some regards heavy, but it's an intro in my eyes because it was the first ever thriller book that I personally read. I do know that other Bookstagram people and booktubers, they actually have read Gone Girl as their first ever thriller book. And so not only from my recommendation, but seeing their recommendation, I highly recommend trying Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn as a thriller. As you guys know, this has been adapted into a movie. It is a really good movie, but I highly recommend that you go ahead and read the book if you haven't already. So a quick synopsis on Gone Girl, just in case you haven't watched the movie or read the book, is that we do have a husband and wife duo. It is Nick and Amy, and it is their 5th wedding anniversary, and long story short, Amy goes missing. So we are going back and forth between Nick's and Amy's point of view. We're trying to figure out what happened, what went wrong in their relationship, where's Amy, do we find Amy? And the twists in this book are pretty shocking. So I highly recommend that if you want to go ahead and try out a thriller, go ahead and try Gone Girl. The next recommendation that I have is a book for those of you that want to venture into the spooky / horror realm of literature, and that is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I personally recommend this if you want to start out in the horror realm, just like how I thought that Gone Girl was a great stepping off point for a thriller. I think that Home Before Dark is a great recommendation for a horror book. It's not too scary, but if you are new to horror or you don't really care for horror movies, you might find this one a little bit scary. If you are not a novice for horror though, you may consider this more of a spooky book because we do have elements of paranormal written throughout the whole entire book. You guys know I've talked about this book so many times on my channel, but long story short, if you haven't read this book or you don't know anything about it, we are following Maggie, the main character, who inherits a house after her father passes away. But the thing is, we don't know if this is truly a haunted house or not. Maggie had actually lived there when she was very young for a very short amount of time, and her father had actually went ahead and written a book about their experience whenever they lived in this house. So we are flipping between dual timeline and dual perspective between Maggie and her dad in the past when she lived there as a young child and in the present when she is going back to the house. But regardless, highly recommend, especially if you want to get into that spooky horror vibes and just experience the paranormal house for the first time. The next recommendation that I have for you all is a book that you would want to read if you're wanting to understand more of a historical context, and that is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This story follows Kaya, who grows up in North Carolina, specifically in the marsh. I highly recommend this book if you are really into learning about plot development and really learning about the history of one specific place. This is, I guess you could consider a coming of age story. However, I do want to go ahead and give a disclaimer that I didn't particularly care for this book too much. I thought that there was going to be more of the romance and the murder mystery, which is what I had been told this was marketed as. But for me personally, this really went ahead and talked about the plot and the context in Kaya growing up in the marsh, which, don't get me wrong, it was a beautiful story, but it was just not exactly what I was looking for. The next genre that we're going to go ahead and talk about is mystery, and I specifically am going to be talking about a series. So Quick disclaimer, I have not finished the series yet. You guys know why. I have talked about it before on my channel, but the series is the Lady Sherlock series by Sherry Thompson in her first book, which is A Study in Scarlet Women. If you want to get into mystery, if you want to understand Sherlock Holmes, I highly recommend that you read this series by Sherry Thomas. All I'm going to say about this series is imagine if Sherlock Holmes was a woman. That's literally all that you need to know about this series. It is just a retelling of Sherlock Holmes as a female detective, and I'm not going to go into much further detail because I think it is a great experience to just go in blind, go in with an open heart, and just see what Sherry Thomas has to offer. I promise you, if you love Sherlock Holmes, you are going to be addicted to this series. I'm literally putting this series on hold for myself because I do not want the story to end. And the 6th book is not coming out into the fall, which is when I'll be in school. So I'm really doing my best to try to pump the brakes a little bit because I'm not going to be able to wait for several months before I can go ahead and pick up the 6th book. So I'm trying to space them out a little bit, but highly recommend this series. It is just absolutely beautiful, perfect, especially if you want to go ahead and get into the mystery genre. The next recommendation that I have for you all is not only a genre, but it's also a very specific trope. So the specific genre is young adult romance or YA romance, but then the trope itself is enemies to lovers. And this is personally my all-time favorite enemies to lovers book. And not only is it just one, but it is part of a trilogy, and that is the Perfect Chemistry trilogy by Simone Eccles. So I had personally went ahead and read this book in middle school, specifically after I had read The Outsiders. So if you read The Outsiders growing up and you loved that book, I highly think that you're going to love this book as well. Or if you went ahead and watched the musical Grease, I do think that you would go ahead and love this book as well. So in this book, we have the North versus the South, or the wrong side of the train tracks, depending on where you live. So we have Alex, who is part of a gang, and then we have Brittany, who is more or less considered the golden girl in high school. And they are forced to be lab partners in their chemistry class. And the angst between them, the hatred that they have towards each other at the beginning, is just so fantastic. You slowly not only get to see them get under each other's skin because the hatred element, you get to see them fall in love. You get to see them not only get under their skin, but break down the walls that they have built around other people. And I highly recommend this book, especially if you want to get into the enemies lovers trope. I do want to go ahead and say that the second 2 books in the trilogy actually follow Alex's younger brothers, and you do get to follow up and hear about Alex and Brittany in those books as well. So you're not just done with them forever after Perfect Chemistry. You do get to hear about them in the last 2 books of the trilogy, but regardless, all of them are enemies to lovers, and they are young adult romance books. Similar to the young adult romance enemies to lovers trope, I do have a recommendation for adult romance books, friends to lovers trope. So personally, that is my least favorite trope of the romance genre. I think it's boring, it's very predictable for me personally, but I finally found a book that is friends to lovers that I genuinely do love with all my heart, and that is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. As you guys have seen in my Book of the Month challenge, which I'll go ahead and link in the cards, I adore this book. It is following Alex and Poppy, who met whenever they were freshmen in college. They went on vacation every single summer together, and then they had a mysterious falling out. This book is alternating between different timelines. So we see Alex and Poppy's relationship starting to build, and then we see where it falls apart, and then they are picking up the pieces to try to see if they can rekindle their friendship. It is beautiful. It made me laugh. It made me smile so freaking hard. And it is the first time that I genuinely thought I love friends to lovers romance trope. But highly recommend that you guys go ahead and give this one a read. I'll go ahead and link up my video showing you guys my reaction whenever I read this for the first time. But this is definitely a #1 pick for me, especially when it comes to the friends to lovers trope. And the final recommendation that I have for you all is not necessarily classified under one specific genre that I personally would classify it as. I just think it's one of those books that you need to read no matter what point in your life you are. And that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This book, going blind, going with an open mind and just let it fill your heart. I have never read a book that put me through so many emotions before and gave me so many life lessons and just taught me what it was to be kind and be open-minded. For me personally, The House on the Cerulean Sea is the perfect book that you should read if you just want to feel a hug. I don't know how TJ Klune did it, but I literally felt the whole entire time I was reading the book that it was just one giant hug, just telling me that everything was going to be okay. We do have LGBTQ representation within the book, and we do experience little life lessons that have a huge impact on you no matter what age you are within that book. So that's all I'm going to say about it. I don't want to spoil it because I think that everybody who reads it can find something different within that book that really resonates with them. But yeah, go ahead and give that one a read. It is one of my favorite books of all time. All right, y'all, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, go ahead and give it a like. Go ahead and comment down if you've read any of these books or what books you would recommend to a beginner who wants to get into reading. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!